Hi, everyone, and welcome to Ask Christa, the place where you can ask questions about how to work through business challenges and workplace issues. I'm Christa Dhimo, and today's listener question is a question that every business school asks of its first-year MBA students. What are the top skills of effective managers? First, let's talk about what and who a manager is. I want all of us to think of a manager as anyone who has direct or indirect reports, meaning either employees report to you on a formal org chart or they report to you because of a project. This is important because in many matrix structures, the organization has a formal management lines where employees have a boss who oversees the formal aspects of management, such as hiring, performance and development, performance improvement plans, and terminations, such as firings with cause or layoffs. But they also have a project or program manager, and again, this is in matrix organizations, and those projects or program managers oversee the day-to-day tasks, activities, and deliverables associated with a project or a program. And they're managing employees too. Check out episode 19 to learn more about organizational structures such as functional and matrixed reporting lines. It's important to think about managers as having ultimate accountability for what employees deliver. Quality of the deliverable, the timing, the scope, and what was intended. And I make this distinction because whether someone technically reports to you or not, meaning whether you're in charge of someone's employment status, the act of managing people and the role of being a manager is about the same, whether it's a dotted line or solid line employee and manager structure. Although some would argue, and I'm one of them, being a solid line boss where employees technically report to you, even if they are dispersed across the company in various projects, it tends to be easier in terms of motivation when you're the one in charge of raises and promotions. And keep in mind, raises and promotions are just one aspect of what it takes to motivate your employees, but they are important ones. That said, in matrixed organizations, even formal bosses or solid line managers ask for a lot of inputs when setting up for a raise or a promotion with one of their employees. Or the other side of that, a performance improvement plan or a termination with cause route. That requires a lot of inputs too. And some would argue, and I'm one of them, that being a dotted line manager where employees are on loan to you for specific work that will be done in your project and likely in other people's projects too, that tends to be harder in terms of motivation because of how many priorities the employees have. You aren't the only project they're on, and you are but one input of many others as to whether someone may receive a promotion or a raise that's provided by their direct manager. And while you may contribute to the decision to put an employee on a performance improvement plan, you're still but one input of many others. This is when the aspects of effective managers from an interpersonal dynamic and influence perspective really matters. It's harder to manage the work of employees in a matrixed environment, especially if your team members are on various other projects while also working on yours. My point? Management is hard. You're working with good humans and sometimes not good humans, and most of the time you're also still working on your own work too. There are a lot of books and articles and research that talks about the skills of the most effective managers, usually related to communication, which is not just speaking, but listening too, negotiating conflict, managing your own emotions like a pro, learning what's required from an employment law perspective specific to your team, how to develop and guide performance, how to enable corrections and have important conversations while keeping your team motivated. The list goes on, and it changes with time too. What you needed to be an effective manager in 1925 is different from what is needed to be an effective manager in 2025. So I'm going to answer this question while focused on baseline skills. My answer may surprise you. The number one skill I've seen in the most effective managers always makes the top 5 in any list, and it's supported by research. It's self-awareness. But while most talk about it in the context of emotional intelligence, I'm going to talk about it in the context of learning and knowing how you learn best. That is a big part of self-awareness that most never think about. Yet if you don't start there isn't too much you can do to become an effective or a more effective manager. When you know how you learn, you know what you need. And that will make learning new things more enjoyable. It also makes the learning stick. For example, if you know you're the type of learner who needs to learn with your hands or in the moment, experientially, you're going to want to learn some management techniques and then immediately apply and practice them in role-playing situations and before you have to apply the same techniques in the real world with your employees. You may instead be more theoretical in your approach. Maybe that's your style instead when you're thinking about learning and how you learn best. You want to absorb a lot of information at your own pace. With a more independent pace of learning, when you get to the role-playing to practice what you've learned, it's more about practicing and ironing out the wrinkles. Overall, I list self-awareness in the context of learning at the top of the list because effective management isn't just about impulse control and emotional regulation and connecting with others and the technical skills of what you need to be effective as a manager. Managers who do well focus on personal growth. They are open to learning new things, willing to learn the many skills it takes to be an effective manager. They have flexible thinking. They're open to feedback and coaching and are ready for the commitment of being a manager. They connect with their team and develop a spidey sense when something is wrong, feels wrong, even if the team isn't bringing it up. They work at learning the various skills needed to be effective, and they practice them all day long. And those are likely the skills you all thought of on your own when you heard the question about effective management skills. The second most important skill, also about learning, is knowing how to apply what you've learned. And yes, this is a skill. It's also why a lot of management training doesn't work. You put adults in a room to learn all kinds of techniques related to effective management, then send them back to work. But applying what you've learned in a classroom, even if there is role play, it's not the same as effectively applying it in the real world, in the moment, when you need the skills. Those who love learning often seek opportunities to apply what they've learned and continue learning, practicing and refining. The majority of people aren't built that way. It requires practice to build the skill of applying what you've learned toward real-world scenarios. After that, applying what you've learned in the context of each good human in your team while maintaining perspective of the bigger picture. And this is a flex for sure. Who on the team needs a more direct approach versus a slower approach for corrections? Who needs some confidence building after having a terrible boss before you? Who thinks they're much farther ahead in their skills than they are and tends to take over, versus someone who thinks they're much farther ahead in their skills than they are and sits back and lets other people do the work? It's the same issue, but two different people and two different styles. How will you handle that? How will you handle it within the bigger picture of what's happening in your department or your organization? When you're working with good humans and you're trying to get the most out of them, truly the most important thing you bring to the table is your ability to connect with them, for sure. But remember, it's not just about getting the most out of them, but the best out of them. So it's not just about knowing how you learn and then how to apply the learning, but how you'll deepen your connection with the individuals on your team and within the context of your team as a result of what you've learned. That's the part I just mentioned. Management isn't an easy role, especially if you want to be effective. And the top skills aren't the ones you usually think about, the surface skills that anyone and everyone should be effective at, like listening and speaking, engaging others, giving feedback. You should have plenty of help as a manager to build the skill of understanding how you learn and then to learn the skills that's needed to be effective. The support should come from your own manager, from HR with a learning and development team. But if you don't have that, you can dive into a variety of resources you can find anywhere and everywhere these days. So for this episode, I've mixed some of the resources to be management resources and some research, so not just the research piece. And as always, you'll find these additional resources in the show notes. So first, some research about what makes effective managers effective. Here you can read about specific skills, but keep in mind that none of this will matter if you don't know how you learn, don't know how to apply what you've just learned, and don't know how to apply it at the granular level specific to each employee's needs. By the way, this isn't about burning yourself out trying to please or coddle your employees. It's simply acknowledging that you'll be far more effective as a manager if you tailor some of your management skills and approaches to the individuals in your team. I've included a Harvard Business Review article from 2005 that still holds true. It's written by Marcus Buckingham, and if the name sounds familiar, it's because he's one of the authors from the book, First Break All the Rules, which I talked about in episode 19, answering the listener question, does management training matter? The article is called What Great Managers Do, and again, it's aged well, barely looking its 20-year status. It goes into depth about the characteristics, skills, and practices of great managers, and offers anecdotes to make it real. And it's based on some of the best research ever conducted about management, studied from the perspective of employees. In addition, I've included an article from the Harvard Gazette, published in August 2024 and written by staff writer and researcher Liz Mineo. The article is called You Want to Be Boss, You Probably Won't Be Good at It. It's not the downer it sounds like. Taking it from the writer's research, it explores predictive measures that pinpoint skills leading to effective managers. Much of it has to do with how someone is able to relate to others, but it also has to do with how well someone can allocate resources. And in order to do that, you have to understand the work and understand your people. I also included a peer review paper based on a study that aimed to produce, as they state, quote, comprehensive definition, conceptual model, and validated scale to measure managerial interpersonal skills, MIPS or MIPS, end quote. The paper is called The Good Manager, Development and Validation of the Managerial Interpersonal Skill Scale, and it was published in 2021. If you're feeling intellectually ambitious about the top skills of effective managers, read the abstract and the introduction. It's a good read. It's a friendly read. I'd skim through the theoretical background and the MIPS construct section. I think it's important for perspective, more perspective than anything else, but it's dense. It's important to understand the reasons behind this research and the gaps in literature that it's aiming to fill, but not much literature might not be your cup of tea, hence my recommendation to skim it, but I do think it's worth skimming. If you're interested in learning more about managerial and interpersonal skills overall, read the section titled The Managerial Role and Managerial Interpersonal Skills. As part of the literature review, you will see it cites a lot of papers that will give you an appreciation for how much research is available and how much management skills have been studied. The authors of this paper set out to codify the interpersonal skills in management so as to streamline such research and measure the skills more effectively. You could certainly review all the methods in the 4 studies as well as the way in which the research established the scales, but I'd move down to the overall discussion to get the gist and sum up. For those aspiring to promote into management roles or who are currently in management roles, this paper enables you to see a variety of skills that are of utmost importance and influence when it comes to effective management, and they're very common to core competencies expected of all managers in a lot of companies. Aside from the research, I want to offer a few supportive resources also. First up, SHRMS. That's SHRM and stands for the Society of Human Resource Management. It's a member-driven society that's a worldwide authority on workplace operations from the perspective of people. Full-time employees, part-time employees, contractors, you name it. You can find a lot of resources there. As always, I want to remind you of Gallup as a resource also. I mention them frequently because they provide a ton of research on organizational performance, employee engagement, and of course, management effectiveness. When Marcus Buckingham co-wrote First Break All the Rules with Kurt Kaufman, it was while they were at Gallup. In fact, for this episode, I've included a quick article called How Influential is a Good Manager? And that's from Swellentrop and Bowman at Gallup. Again, your additional resources can always be found in the show notes. Worth noting, management isn't for everyone, and it's okay if you find out it's not for you. It's a big job, and if you're the type who likes to go fast, likes to make quick decisions, like to operate as an individual contributor, or simply don't want the responsibility to manage difficult conversations and confrontations when they come about, my advice is to honor that and do what will be best for you and your career. Gone are the days when the only way up is with management roles. And sure, some still carry dogma about this point, but in the end, find your peace. Feel satisfied with your work. Be okay with feeling good at work. whether you're in a management role or not. And there it is, episode 23. The next episode wraps up this season. And while this season, season 2, focused on a lot of interpersonal dynamics, season 3 is shaping up to be more business-centric. So keep your questions coming. To submit your question, go to my show's website, askchrista.com. That's Christa with a CH. And click on the Submit a Question button. While you're there, click the big blue follow button too if you haven't already. And consider signing up for my weekly newsletter, More Answers, which I release every Sunday night to prep you up for the work week. When you sign up, you'll receive my Survivor's Guide to Business Challenges and Workplace Issues too. Thank you for your support. And remember, if you have a business challenge or workplace issue, ask Christa.